Penguins played spoiler against the Columbus Blue Jackets on Friday before getting a point against the Florida Panthers on Sunday. Pat and I are going to recap both games, plus discuss another great performance from Sergei Murashov in Wilkes-Barre right after this.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes. You can follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patrick Damp. You can follow him on all social media platforms at Synonym for Wet, and you can follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. Of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen/watch of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. So, Pat, the Penguins get a very big win on Friday against the Columbus Blue Jackets, playing a bit of spoiler and kind of derailing Columbus's playoff hopes. Though I will say Columbus played fairly well in that game, especially in the third period. They had a couple really big pushes in that third period, and they're a fun team to watch, man. They really are. I think if they can get another top six forward and another top four bona fide defenseman, I think they'll be cooking with gas heading into next season and I think well into the future. Their young talent was very much on display in this game. I really like the play, once again, of Marchenko. I really like Voronkov. Werenski was very good once again. But the Penguins, they got contributions from all four lines. The top line in particular was fantastic. Bryan Rust had a nice goal. Rickard Rakell gets another goal. And by the way, did you know Rickard Rakell this season, second in the league in 5-on-5 goals, Pat? 23, only 4 behind Tage Thompson for the NHL lead. Again, he continues to have such a great year. Sidney Crosby, he was great in this one. Heck, we got goals from Noel Acciari and Boko Imama. So that's also great. And by the way, Boko Imama's celebration on that goal that he scored was fantastic. He didn't even realize that the puck went in the net at first, and then he had a celebration for the ages. But that was also quite a snipe. Like, that was a really nice shot by Imama. Also had the fight, was this close to the Gordie Howe hat trick. And I'll say this about Imama. You can tell some of the players are rallying around him in the locker room. He seems like such a great player to be around. He's always having his players' backs on the ice. And while I'm not sure what the future holds for him on this team, if he's going to have a full-time spot on next year's team for the full season, it's at least nice seeing him play good hockey on the fourth line. I'm not going to sit here and say he's a world beater here, people, but he's at least playing adequately on the fourth line. I thought Blake Lizotte also had a good game. I really can't think of too many players, Pat, who did not play well. And we didn't even mention Alex Nedeljkovic. He was over 930 in this game. He made a couple of amazing saves in the third period. The one where he dove out, kind of a little bit of shades of the Dominator, a.k.a. Dominic Hasek, with the save that he made there. He was huge for the Penguins, 936 save percentage to be exact. But I like how the Penguins played in this one. Yeah, I know when you look at some of the underlyings, Pat, you know, the Blue Jackets had about 60% of the shot attempts at 5-on-5, 41 scoring chances, 17 high danger chances at 5-on-5. They had 4 expected goals to the Penguins' 2.4. But I still like how hard the Penguins played. Ned made the big timely saves. And when they got chances, they more than capitalized on them. So that was a really nice win over a team that is still very much in the playoff race. And one more thing, can we not have these two teams play 3 times a year? Let's do 4 times a year just because it's a lot better. What happened to the game I love, Pat?
See, that's a deeper discussion about the way the NHL does playoff seeding, scheduling. They say they want rivalries, but then they do the opposite of what foments rivalries. They say they want to have a divisional playoff, and then the playoffs are anything but divisional. So different discussion for a different day. But I loved the Penguins game on Friday against the Blue Jackets. They continue to confirm what we have been saying about this team this year. Are they very good? No. But they fight. They absolutely fight. They've got a lot of heart. They don't take many games off. Yeah, sure, there's a handful of games this season you can point to and say they didn't show up, but welcome to an 82-game NHL season, probably soon to be 84. So at this point, you know you're going to have a couple nights where your team doesn't show up and doesn't play its best. But for the most part, this is just an undermanned team that works its butt off and plays hard every single night. And they got rewarded against the Blue Jackets. For Boko Imama, I'm with you on that. I don't see where he fits in the near to future term, but you can't be upset with the way he's playing. He is a typical fourth liner. He's not a goon. Sure, he can fight and does fight, but he's not a guy who can only do that. He plays a hard physical game. He absolutely sniped one against the Blue Jackets. It was a great shot, a great play. And listen, we can have at a later date over the summer when we're scraping for things to talk about fighting in the NHL, but I got to give him full marks because Olivier is like the last of the true blue power forwards in the NHL. He also not a goon. He can play the game. He can score, he can hit, and boy, can he fight. So Imama going after him and going right to center ice and holding his own against him, I give him full marks for that because that could have been a moment where an overzealous player goes up against one of the big boys, gets his lunch fed to him, and it's ugly. And it wasn't that. He held his own. It wasn't a great fight because they were just kind of trading jabs back and forth. Weren't a lot of big punches, but that's a big test. And lastly, for Friday's game, that was exactly what the doctor ordered for Alex Nedeljkovic. He had been struggling up to this point, and he was locked in on Friday. Made a, like you said, a couple Dominic Hasek-esque desperation saves, but more than that, made the saves he needed to make. He was aggressive. He was at the front of his crease. He was making the stops he needed to make. And it was a fantastic game for him because you make 44 saves. And Nedeljkovic hinted at it himself where you go and look at the analytics. Columbus didn't have a ton of grade A chances. They were just firing the puck from everywhere. But when you're a goalie who's struggling, feeling the puck early, making some routine saves, that can help you get out of your funk. And it really showed on Friday for Nedeljkovic.
It is funny. It says the Blue Jackets only had 3 high danger chances at 5-on-5 in the third period. They had 8 in the second period, even though it felt like they had more than 3 at 5-on-5 in that third because the Blue Jackets were peppering the Penguins for the majority of that period. And Nedeljkovic was making quite a few great saves. You said it though. He had been really struggling since the Four Nations face-off break. He's basically lost his net because Tristan Jarry wants to keep playing like prime LeBron James. More on him in just a second when we get to the game against Florida. But he needed that start, and he's more than earned a start potentially this week. Maybe they give him the net in Buffalo, for example. I think they'll go back to Jarry once again for the game in Tampa this week, but then in the game in Buffalo to end the 3-game trip, Pat, I could see the Penguins going to Ned in that game. But there's another play that also really stood out to me, and it was the first goal that really set the tone in this game. Great keep at the blue line by Ryan Graves, of all people. I actually thought he played fairly well in that game, by the way. He's able to keep it, get the puck over to the right side of the point, and then Evgeny Malkin crashes the net for a garbage goal. And like I just loved everything about that goal. Ryan Graves actually using his long reach to keep the puck in the zone. Again, thought he played very well, getting the puck to the net, and then Evgeny Malkin going right to the dirty areas and getting a greasy goal. And speaking of Geno, that's really where I want to take this. He's on top of his game right now. His skating is top-notch. He's seeing the ice so well. He's playing well in his own zone. Heck, even in the overtime against the Panthers, for example, man, he was on his butt for, it felt like 10 to 15 seconds. And he's like, nope, I'm not giving up on the play. He easily could have given up on that play. Panthers would have had like a 2-on-1 in that scenario. He's like, nope, I'm not doing that. I'm going to pin the puck to me. If it was for a little bit longer, they could have potentially called a penalty there. But, you know, sometimes the refs miss that stuff. But I absolutely love Geno's game right now. He's been great these last 2 games, but especially great since the Four Nations face-off break. Every time he has one of those extended breaks, he has his legs, and it's awesome to watch.
Yeah, he's been fantastic. It's nice to see because going into the Four Nations face-off, it kind of looked like Evgeny Malkin was running out of gas. He was running out of steam. You weren't seeing a lot of typical Geno moments, and then he gets that week and a half, 2 weeks off, and he has been an absolute man possessed.
He was also a bit banged up, by the way, but Continue.
True. But prior to the injuries and prior to the break,
Right.
you weren't seeing a ton of great Malkin moments that you're used to. And we expect that. He's getting older. He's getting up there for, a pro athlete. But at the end of the day, you see him now, and this is looking like a pretty solid version of Evgeny Malkin. And the goal he scores against Columbus, I think that's something you can see in the evolution of his game over the next however many years he wants to play, whether it's 1 more, 2 more, 3 more, however many. Yeah, he's not going to be able to pick the puck up at his own goal line and rumble all the way down the ice, dance through 4 or 5 guys and deke the goalie out of his pads, but he's still huge and extremely strong. So if he wants to get a little bit greasy, play a little bit in front of the net, could extend his shelf life a little bit. So we will see, but encouraging signs from Evgeny Malkin the last couple of weeks.
100%. And unless you have anything else to add about that game against Columbus, again, I do not think anyone on the Penguins played poorly in this game, at least to me. But I think that'll do it for this first segment of today's show. Coming up in the second segment, Pat and I are going to recap this game against Florida, what we liked, what we didn't like. And then to end the show, we got to talk about Sergei Murashov having another insane start for Wilkes-Barre against Hershey and discuss Harrison Brunick. Wilkes-Barre looks like they're getting a pretty big addition for the Calder Cup playoffs later on this year. But before we get to those things, we got to tell you all about our first sponsor, and that is Wonderful Pistachios. Are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they are packed with fiber and better for your unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It is the perfect grab and go snack for busy days, whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost. They are always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. And don't go away. We still have one more message from Bear Mattress.
Did you know getting a good night's sleep is the #1 recipe for long-term success in life? I didn't. It took me way longer to realize than I'd like to admit. It was years of tossing and turning. I was always tired. I never felt like I could live up to my potential, but not anymore. Thanks to Bear Mattress. I used their sleep quiz and I matched with the Elite Hybrid. It's perfect for side sleepers like me. Now I wake up energized. I'm getting deeper sleeps and I'm ready to attack the day. No matter how you sleep, Bear Mattress has a match for you with a focus on recovery, cooling, and pressure relief to upgrade your sleep and improve your overall quality of life. Go to bearmattress.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL at checkout for 40% off site-wide. This offer is not available anywhere else. You have to use my promo code on the very last page of checkout to get this discount. That's bearmattress.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL for 40% off site-wide. Bearmattress.com, promo code LOCKEDONNHL.
All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patrick Dam. So, Pat, Penguins get a point, but they do not get the second point as they fall once again in a shootout. 3 certainties in life, my friend: death, taxes, and the Pittsburgh Penguins losing in shootouts because they are so freaking bad at them. I don't want to spend too much time on that because we've already ranted enough throughout the season about them with shootouts. You can obviously tell when you watch these attempts that they have that they don't give a crap about the shootout. Like, they haven't given a crap about it all year. The attempts are boring, lazy, terrible, whatever you want to call it. I think I'm just going to end my talk about it there, Pat, because there's really not much else to say about the shootout. They don't care about it, and neither should we.
NHL players are over it. I'm sorry. You're not changing my mind on that. I've said it before. I'll continue to say it until we get 8 to 10 minute overtimes. They're just done with it. They don't want to do them anymore. You can even the Florida Panthers last night. It wasn't like guys were going in and doing crazy attempts. They were just trying to get through it. And when it happened and Barkov gets the winner, everyone was just like, all right, fine, we're done. Call it a night.
I mean, they've only converted 2 of their last 14 shootout attempts per the legendary Bob Grove. Yes, that is terrible. But once again, people, they do not care about the skills competition part of this game once it gets to a shootout. I thought the Penguins played pretty good in 3-on-3 overtime. I mean, they've been really good in 3-on-3 for most of the season. They had a couple of really good quality chances. I still wish in that overtime, Pat, that Sid just shot it on the 2-on-1. I understand what he's doing there, trying to get it to Letang. But, buddy, you have such a great shot. Let it rip, man. Like, come on. I need you to let that one rip. And speaking of Sid, he had 2 more points last night, 2 points away now from breaking his and Wayne Gretzky's point per game record that they're currently tied with. 2 more points. It'll be his 20th straight season of a point per game, setting an NHL record. I think he's going to do it this week, my friend. And he was very on top of his game last night. I mean, that pass that he had to Bryan Rust in the offensive zone, the sauce on it, and then the finish from Rust, like, that was sexy. It really was. Like, everything about that was so beautiful. And you look at some of the numbers for Sid this year. Danny Shirey was actually first to post it on Twitter. Shout out to him. He is tied with Leon Draisaitl right now for the NHL lead in 5-on-5 points with 51 at 37 years old. Isn't that crazy to think about, man?
We finished the last segment talking about how good Evgeny Malkin has looked for the past couple weeks, and we have to continue to marvel at how great Sidney Crosby is at 37. Is he the best in the world anymore? Probably not. But is he one of the top 5 or 10 players in the NHL still? Absolutely.
Hell yeah.
And the funniest thing to me about it, I don't even know if I would say funny. I would say probably the more impressive thing to me about it is that you look at his resume, you look at what he has done in the NHL, and he's 37. He has won 3 Stanley Cups. He's been to a 4th Stanley Cup Final. He's won multiple MVPs. He's won scoring titles, Olympic gold, World Cup of Hockey, 4 Nations face-off. He's done everything you can do in this game. And yet, to quote Colby Armstrong, he continues to play and train like there's a league above the NHL that he needs to make. And we know, Sid knows, this roster knows that they're not going anywhere this year.
Yeah.
And he is playing like this is a team that's 2 wins from winning a Stanley Cup. It's incredible to watch. And if I can give myself a pat on the back, it's exactly what I have been ranting and writing about when it comes to the whole, the Penguins just need to tank thing. Sidney Crosby at 37, after doing everything he has done, is still playing this way. He's still playing this hard. He's still giving it his all and continuing to be one of the best players in the league. If you're the Penguins and you want this youth movement to really succeed, I would rather have Sid right now doing this, teaching these young guys that there is a standard in this town that has to be met. Otherwise, you don't belong here. And it would be easy for Kyle Dubas to just burn the forest and throw everybody out and hit the reset button. And I know it's tantalizing, but just looking at the way Sid is playing, the way he played last night, the way he's been playing for this entire season, I want that culture to continue. I want the players who come in, whether it's draft picks, whether it's young players acquired via trade, players you sign in the offseason, I want them to come here and know that the guy who leads this team, the guy who makes this engine move, 87, Sidney Crosby, will not tolerate you coming in and just doing the bare minimum. You have to be willing to work. You have to be willing to push towards winning. And looking at his game last night, he very well may have been the best player on the ice. Bryan Rust will take the headlines for the 2 goals, but Sidney Crosby, man, a force to be reckoned with.
He was creating offense every time he was on the ice, like especially in overtime. Heck, even late in the 3rd period where the Penguins were getting flat out dominated. I mean, the Penguins, I felt like first period, tremendous. They fully crushed the Panthers in that period. Second period, a little bit closer to even, but I still like the Penguins' effort a little bit more in that second. Third period, though, it was kind of like the Carolina Corsies for Florida. They were firing everything, including the kitchen sink at the net. I mean, Pat, if you look at the attempts for that period, 30-4 for the Panthers, by the way. They were attempting literally everything. 10 scoring chances for 2 at 5-on-5. They had all 4 high danger chances, but I will say they did have less than 1 expected goal at 5-on-5 in that third period. So the Penguins, for as many attempts that they gave up, they were still keeping the Panthers pretty well to the outside, even though Tristan Jarry, when he was being tested, he was at least making most of the saves. The one from Lindell, though, I mean, that's just a disgusting pass from Luosterainen. I mean, the no-look pass right there completely fooled everyone on the ice, including Jarry, and he really had no shot. Yeah, his movement was a little bit wonky there, but still, really nice play there by the Panthers to tie the game late in the third period. And speaking of Jarry, once again, fantastic. I mean, what more can you ask for from him in this game? He was making timely save after timely save. I'd give him the start this week in Tampa Bay. Just very great stuff from Jarry. Again, I retweeted my meme, man. It is literally like watching prime LeBron or prime Jordan out there. When the stakes are low, he plays his best. But you mentioned something about, Crosby and, and tanking all that. And I wanted to bring this up because I saw this on Twitter last night. Rob Rossi, a friend of the show, he covers the team for The Athletic. We've had him on here multiple times. He put out an interesting tweet last night that I wanted to discuss with you, Pat. He says, the long-term damage of this hot streak by the Penguins could set the franchise back for a lot longer than anyone realizes. Winning their way out of potential top 5 pick was terrible. Falling out of top 10 would render this season a disaster. They need impact prospects. And while I don't disagree with Rob that they need impact prospects, they do, people. Like, I 100% agree with that. But if you look at the standings, even before they went on this little 5-1-1 run, they probably weren't going to get a top 4 pick in the draft unless they got a lot of pure lottery luck. 5 was probably the best they could do, but even then, you still probably needed a little bit of luck. 6 to 7, you're in that range. They're probably going to pick this year in that 6 to 10 to 11-ish range. And that's totally fine with me, man. Like, I think you can't tell professional athletes to flat out lose games. He tweets that after. Like, obviously, coaches and players are not going to actively tank games. And while I agree on that, like, I don't think this is going to set the franchise back for, 3 to 4 years. There are 4 players in this draft who I think have a legit shot to play next season. Misa, Schaefer, Martone, and Higgins. I think all 4, this is just me, I think all 4 could play next season. Everyone after that is going to need at least another year, whether that's Frondell, whether that's Eklund, whether that's Roger McQueen, whether it's whoever else you want to put on there, people, Benjamin Kindle, for example, Jake O'Brien. And my point is, there's not going to be that much of a drop-off from someone like a Frondell and Eklund to an O'Brien. Because I like O'Brien quite a bit. I think he'd instantly become one of the Penguins' best prospects in the system, and I think you can get him around that 9 to 10 range. So that's where I kind of disagree with Rob on that. Like, yes, do they need impact prospects? Absolutely. But once again, and as he tweeted after, you can't tell players to lose games. And as we've talked about, Pat, you don't want losing to become accepted. It's why I am totally fine with the core being here for some of these down years, because they're going to teach some of these young guys what it takes to win in the NHL. Once losing infects your organization, it's like a disease. It takes a long time to get rid of. So I don't think this is going to set them back 3 to 4 to 5 years, especially in a year where the draft is not nearly as deep as next year's draft is. So just wanted to have a little bit of conversation about that tweet. Again, no ill will to Rob. Again, really good follow. We've had him on the show multiple times, but just wanted to discuss it a little bit more in depth to close out this segment.
Yeah, Rob's great, but he missed the mark on this one because you already brought up the draft. Unless they were picking top 4, which was extremely unlikely even before they've gone on this little run here, you weren't going to get an impact player this draft or even this summer. What I will push back on him with is this. If we were still in a world where the cap was flat, I would agree. It would be time for Dubas and Sullivan to do what Jesse Marshall said to us last week, where you start moving pieces on the chessboard to where you're not telling players to tank, but you're putting a roster out there that will tank. The difference now is you're going to have a rapidly increasing salary cap over the next 3 years. The Penguins have 30 draft picks over the next 3 years, and you have both a ton of cap space and all of those assets to where you can parlay some of that into impact players or young, already established NHLers, because you're not going to use all 30 of those picks.
No.
I highly doubt they're going to use all 30. We're probably going to see some of the second, third, and fourth round picks moved, depending upon what happens with the New York Rangers pick that they own right now. They might even move that as well to get somebody.
Also, just to clear up some confusion, we actually got more clarity on that pick over the weekend, Pat, because it feels like this has been a total mind confusion for all of us. The Rangers actually have almost until the draft to let the Penguins know if it's top 13, if they're keeping it, or if they're sending the 2026 first round pick. Just want to clarify everything because I know there's been a lot of confusion about it, but Kyle Dubas said it during the presser, and then Puckpedia confirmed it over the weekend. So just want to put that in here because I know you and I and so many other Penguins people have been very confused about this a little bit because we've heard 500 different things about that pick.
For sure. And like I was saying, though, this isn't going to set them back. If we were in a flat cap world where they didn't have a ton of draft capital, and this is going to be a big lift for Kyle Dubas and the Penguins to get this team back to playoff contention, because a couple wrong moves here and there, whether it's draft picks, trades, signings, you name it, that is what could set them back, not what their draft position is going to be this summer. So at the end of the day, this really kind of is something that I will say the opposite of what Rob is saying. I think this helps their little mini rebuild, retool on the fly, because you're continuing to keep a standard in the organization that you're not here to foment a rebuild. You're not here to help this team lose. You have to be here and be ready to win. It also connects with what we were saying and what we're going to talk a little bit about in the final segment. Wilkes-Barre is starting to build a culture. They're starting to build a group of players who are going to go to the Calder Cup playoffs and hopefully go on a run and learn to win together and learn to play meaningful hockey together. That way, when they come up to Pittsburgh, not only have they experienced that, but they're going to be under the wing of Sidney Crosby, who is going to hold them to a high standard. So I get where Rob is coming from, but I think he missed the mark on this one.
Agreed. I think it was a little too far, considering, again, when you look at this year's draft, there's, again, to me, 4 players who I think could play as early as next season. Everyone else is at least a year away. And even though I love Eklund quite a bit, I like Frondell a lot as well. I think Eklund is better, by the way, but again, that's just one man's opinion. I don't think there's that much of a drop-off when you look at those 2 players and then someone else like a Jake O'Brien, who I still think is one of the top prospects in the draft. And I think you can get him around that 9 to 10, 11 range if the Penguins get one of those picks, for example. I think that will be a really good pick if they can get him in the 2025 NHL draft. A couple other things about this game before we head to our final segment and discuss Murashov and Harrison Brunick. Again, Bryan Rust, he was once again fantastic. I thought Evgeny Malkin, of course, I love when he uncorks that clapper on the power play, man. Just give me more Geno bombs. I love saying it on the show. I'll say it again. Give me more Geno bombs on the power play. And speaking of the power play, that movement on both power plays, that meant something to me, sir. It really did, especially on that second power play. They were zipping that puck around with authority, getting a lot of high-quality chances, ends with Evgeny Malkin's goal. That meant something to me, man. I love the movement on the power play last night. That was the power play that we have seen for most of the season. Not like we've seen in the last couple of weeks where movement is not there. The zone entries are kind of mid. You're just dumping the puck in with some of these hope plays and all that. Nope. You saw none of that on display in the power play on this one. That unit was spectacular once again. But do you have anything else to add from this game?
No, that should be good. I mean, I like the power play. I like the effort. And at the end of the day, it was a not very good team playing an extremely good team. And the Panthers woke up in the third, and I can't critique. This was more a case of the Florida Panthers remembering who they are than the Penguins not playing well. It was just the third period, the Florida Panthers woke up, and overall, I can't fault the Penguins on this one. They worked their butts off. They played a hard game. And sometimes when you play a team like Florida, it doesn't go your way.
100%. Again, the Panthers, they were pretty upset by the way that game against Washington on Saturday went, and they were very unhappy with the way they played for the first 40 minutes. So they're like, okay, yeah, time to wake up. We're playing a team that's not going to make the playoffs. we need to do something about it and get the 2 points because they're trying to win the Atlantic Division this year and get the home ice for at least the first 2 rounds of the Stanley Cup playoffs. So they woke up, they got the win in the shootout. Again, we already had our little 30-second rant about it. We don't need to say anything about it again, but that'll do it for the second segment. Coming up to end the show, Sergei Murashov just keeps winning in Wilkes-Barre. Pat and I are going to discuss that, plus discuss Harrison Brunick looks like is heading to Wilkes-Barre pretty soon, coming up here in the final segment. But before we do that, we got to tell you all about our final sponsor, and that is Monarch Money. Have you ever checked your bank account and wonder where did all your money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it is easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it is a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch Money, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and I save a lot more. And instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off for your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. All right, we're back here in this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patrick Dam. So, Pat, Sergei Murashov is becoming quite the story once again in Wilkes-Barre. He was awesome in his start against Hershey over the weekend, and he has played his tail off against Hershey all year. You know, he's 10-0, obviously, in Wilkes-Barre this year, but Murashov has played the Hershey Bears 4 times, and if you guys know anything about the AHL, you all know Hershey is one of the top teams in the AHL. Wilkes-Barre is probably going to see them at some point during the Calder Cup playoffs. And by the way, that's going to be a fantastic series with how both teams have played this year. And in those games, Sergei Murashov has a .918 save percentage and 1 shutout against the Hershey Bears. He's, again, also 10-0 in Wilkes-Barre this year. I know they have a lot of strong goaltending depth in the system right now in Wilkes-Barre. Philip Larson, for example, has also had a great year. We always have Yoel Blomqvist down there too. But if you're asking me right now, who should start game 1 of the Calder Cup playoffs, it has to be Sergei Murashov. You have to throw him to the Wolves. You have to see how he does in those high-stakes games. He is giving Wilkes-Barre a great effort night after night. I was watching part of that game alongside the March Madness games this weekend, and his side-to-side movement it's insane. And he continues to remind me so much of UC Saros. They play a similar style. They're both undersized, but they're both so calm. They're so poised in net. Their movement is so great. Everything about them, it's so close when you watch Murashov compared to Saros. And again, people, I'm not saying he's going to be like Saros when he gets to the NHL because Saros is a top 5 goaltender in the league when healthy. I'm just saying that he plays like him. Like they have similar styles. And I loved his effort in that game against Hershey. Yeah, I know the game went to overtime. Hershey got one late in the 3rd period, but he was awesome in that one. And you have to start him in the Calder Cup playoffs because this is such a fun story right now. He's giving them well above average goaltending every time he goes out there. And you know what? He also has the record now, Pat, among Penguins rookie goaltenders in Wilkes-Barre.
He's been fantastic. And I think the way you look at this is not that Philip Larson or Yoel Blomqvist suddenly aren't worth giving the time to. It's just, it's been such a meteoric rise for Murashov. And also the one thing we got to mention, the baby Penguins, 1 point away from clinching their spot in the Calder Cup playoffs. And they are still right now chasing down Hershey for the top spot in the Atlantic. They are 5 points out, and we'll see if they're able to catch them because both teams have 11 games left to go. But this is a baby Penguins team that is finding a stride going into the Calder Cup playoffs. And it was an overtime win over Hershey, but if I'm Hershey right now, I'm hearing footsteps. I'm hearing a team coming up behind me because they're playing really well. They've got a bunch of goalies who can play extremely well. And a lot of the players we've had our eyes on this season in Wilkes-Barre are really coming through. So this is a very positive development for the organization that these players are starting to figure it out at the professional level. And before we go today, they might be getting a pretty good prospect coming to Wilkes-Barre. According to Matt Wenzel of the Post-Gazette, Harrison Brunick said the plan is, now that his WHL season has come to an end, he's going to Wilkes-Barre, and he'll be there for the stretch run and hopefully the playoffs. And from what we saw from that kid in training camp in the preseason, it might be a pretty big get for the baby Penguins.
There's an open spot available on the back end as well. So I'm really excited to see him get reps for Wilkes-Barre down the stretch here and into the playoffs. I hope he gets reps, especially in the playoffs. I know he was a bit banged up during his junior season this year, but he's fully healthy now. He had a great camp, had a great preseason, was literally this close to making the Penguins opening night roster. His skating is so fluid. His vision on the ice is second to none. I think he can really cook in Wilkes-Barre here. Yeah, I know it's going to be a pretty big step up, Pat, playing against, AHL players compared to junior league players, but I think he's ready for this. And I'm going to be really stoked to see how he looks once he gets to Wilkes-Barre and once he starts playing in some meaningful games here. That's always such a fun time of the year, man, because, last year Wilkes-Barre got, Koivu and Panamera for the stretch run. And yeah, I know they made the playoffs and they were bounced out a little bit early, but still, it's always a great time of year where you can get some of those other players playing in junior leagues whose seasons ended a bit early because they didn't make the playoffs. Brunick is obviously one of them. And again, open spot there. I'm excited, man. Do you have anything else to add?
No, all good here. I got my dog whining in the background, so I think that means it's time for the show to come to an end.
So about what you're saying is that Penny needs to go out right now. My dogs haven't come in here yet. I think they're kind of just napping with my girlfriend while she works. So at least Teddy's not whining in the mic and Thrawn is not just biting the pillows back here and all that stuff. And also did just want to end the show with this. I mentioned the record a little bit a couple minutes ago. Murashov, he holds the Wilkes-Barre Penguins franchise record for the longest winning streak in a rookie season with 10, by the way, breaking that tie with Matt Murray. Pretty good, I would say. So I'm continually going to be excited to watch him with Wilkes-Barre throughout the season. And again, really hope he gets that start in game 1 of the Calder Cup Playoffs. Penguins this week, they'll play Tuesday against Tampa and Thursday against Buffalo. So we'll preview that game for you all on Tuesday, recap it on Wednesday, preview the game against Buffalo on Thursday, recap that for you all on Friday, and then get you all set for Sunday's game against the Senators. And then next week, Locked On Penguins goes international, at least for me. I'm going to the Dominican Republic with my girlfriend from Monday through Friday, but don't worry, people. There's no days off in this business. I'm taking my laptop. I'm taking my mic. We're going to still cover this team. I'm not going to leave Pat on an island for a whole week of episodes, but that'll do it for today's episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Thank you all so much for taking the time to listen to / watch this one. Pat and I will be back with another show for you all on Tuesday.